Okay, so this is part 3 in the sequence that I'm putting together to explain um, the sort of hidden facts that people know in their hearts, yet they refuse to accept them because, to live in the system we live under, to survive it, requires us to get comfortable with the lie. So this is a continuation of that New South Wales senior constable that was a highway patrolman, which is another way for highwayman, because they're the ones who rob you on the highway. So him coming out and doing this whole thing about how much of a good guy he is because he stood up to, the so-called powers that be. And then the comments that came in the group that I'm in from people who, you know, you imagine that they would understand principle, but then they put these comments forward, which I'm digging into now, that show that really they're still lacking in that awareness of what principle really is. So it's about unpacking that. I want to preface this with saying that I'm using a language that is highly inflammatory, especially for people who are on the receiving end of that. So I'm just giving an acknowledgement that I'm doing that. And the reason I'm doing that is because that's the way the majority of people speak. And if I use different language to what people speak, they end up not being able to understand it and believing that I'm speaking some kind of foreign language like it's alien. So that's why I'm using the language that most people speak. Um, Now, here's the contradiction. If it's not directed at you and you can see that you're outside of the focus point, then most people don't get offended, because especially if they agree with it. But when it's directed at the individual, that's when they get really offended, right? So that's that contradiction. Like, most people speak like this about other people, but they don't like it being directed at them. So before you get offended, just realize that you use this very same language when it comes towards other people. So if you don't like it when it's directed at you, and you don't have a way to hear it any other way than as an insult or an accusation or some kind of put down, then why do you use that language yourself towards other people? Right? You need to be able to answer that. So the old saying is, if you're going to dish it out, you need to be able to take it. So that's what I'm going to start with. And I'm going to continue on back with where I left off, and that's pulling apart the comment of the male who was in the group and finishing that off. And then we're going to move on from that. So let's look at what I got as a response. I asked about what does a conscience know through feelings, right, through your intuition, and I got a mental gymnastics response. With regard to a parent taking away their child's right to choose, I think that it's a parent's responsibility to make choices on behalf. So he said, I think. I didn't ask him what he thought, did I? I asked him what his conscience knew. The child, until the child is able to comprehend the choice. Unfortunately, it now leaves the shaping, modelling and conditioning of that child up to the parent, or worse, the school system, and the experience or opinions that they hold. As I said, I doubt that many of us were raised in multi-generational families that were free from some form of corrupted thinking. That's how we find ourselves 800 years down the track from MC 1215. Yes, you may have corrupted thinking in your life, but you cannot corrupt the conscience. That's the phrasing. You see how it's just coming up with excuses, saying, well, thinking is the most powerful way of being. No, it's the most powerful way to actually corrupt people who do not want to follow their conscience, absolutely. But it's not the most powerful way of being. That's the lie. Under common law, how would a person be brought to a jury? Would a cop constable be asked to set their opinion aside to facilitate arrest to bring that person the hearing? If the jury found that person not guilty, would that have bearing on the fact that the constable had diminished the other person's rights? I don't even know if I have the patience to explain this, but I'll give it a quick go. So we would have constables if we had trial by jury. There wouldn't be police, right? That's one, right? A constable would actually be someone versed in natural laws. That pretty much eliminates the entire population, really, right? Because how many people really know about what universal morality is, like truly can espouse that, and natural law? It's probably 3 or 4 that I've met. But let's just pretend that there is, right? They would, just by sheer fact alone of they know that knowledge, someone who knows about natural law wouldn't just be arresting people willy-nilly because they're told to do so. They would be able to discern, is there someone being harmed here, okay? And would they be using punitive force or protective force? How many people understand what the difference between that is, right? So that's not even factored in. And there'd be a structure in place where you think about it, if you don't have any evidence, what can you do, right? There has to be some kind of evidence. So if the constable has witnessed it, well then, yeah, they're going to be someone who's giving testimony to that, right? So this whole question about, oh, well, because the jury's acquitted them, now does that mean that they've diminished their rights? So if a jury did acquit someone who the constable had witnessed, doing something, how is that now on them? They've used their discernment to go, actually, there's someone being harmed here. I've got evidence of that. It's pretty clear to see that someone's been harmed. You can show, like, whatever happened to the other victim, if there's some bodily parts that have been harmed or if there's property been smashed, that will be presented. I'm not saying I know all the answers, nor am I advocating for police. Jeez, it definitely sounds like you are. I'm saying, and the other thing is, when people say what they're not doing, it's usually what they are doing. I'm saying that there are grey areas in many shades. Like, what does that mean? And many oh no, it says in many shades. Intentions matter, and yes, if you intend to lie to yourself, that's an intention. And then you follow it through, that's you now being complicit, and not only that, but you're actually part of the violation of the laws of nature that you can't unwind. And we are all, well, maybe not all, overgeneralization. Geez, you think you haven't generalized at all throughout the whole thing? Maybe. Improving ourselves. Are we really? Doesn't sound like what you've written here has anything to do with improvement. I have some compassion that people have been duped. How can you be duped if you actually have a conscience? That's the question. You can allow yourself to believe a lie, but you cannot actually be tricked. You can willfully comply and be, a collaborator in your own deception. But you, the real you, the conscious you, it cannot, it's impossible. But like that statement I put up before, you can make yourself. And that's what's not being phrased here. It's always how it's phrased, right? There's the pulling the cloak over your own eyes. And duped hard through much conditioning and feel that they may be finding themselves in a corner with a very few options available. That is my reaction to the original video. So basically went into it to justify that there can be such a thing as a well-intentioned police officer, right? Because someone wants to believe that. All right, let's see what's next. So then that was a male. This is a female chimed in. There's a whole bunch of things that came in between. So are you asking, as I believe many will be of the same mindset as so-and-so, that the first step is to answer your question. Does the parent feel neutral when they violate their child's need for choice? So what that question was is, can you feel neutral? Like, do you have nothing, no kind of reaction in your body? Your conscience doesn't prickle at you, when you know that you violated your child's right to choose, right? And that's sometimes it's using coercive tactics, which will be a punishment or a reward on some level, right? When you know, I'll use the reward to get what I want, right? That's a really quick way it's done. Define violate in this instant, right? Some people can't figure that out. The question is too open-ended. Children want many things during their time under their parents' roof. If the child chooses to take drugs, the parent has the responsibility and the duty. Now, there's a very important word, duty. That means you don't have a choice. So here's someone who believes there's no such thing as parental choice. They believe that you just have to do stuff, right? There it is. There's self-coercion. That's a self-tyranny right there. Someone who's fallen for tyrannizing themselves. To remove that right or decision. If the child wants Macca's, the parent will make a decision based on their own bias. Some will loathe the idea, some will love it. Some will grant that choice occasionally. It's difficult to answer whether a parent feels neutral. Like, she's not even spoken about any feeling here, about any emotion, nothing. It's all been an opinion, right? And a mental gymnastics excursion. When they violate the child's need for choice because the circumstance will be different every time. So, the question I ask is, do you consciously know, right? Do you have a conscious awareness of when there's a violation, right? What I got was something entirely different. The interpretation that I can see came out of this was that this is about being a good or bad parent, being permissive, that kind of stuff. That's not what was asked. Parents will have two rules, one for themselves and one for the child, and they won't admit it. And until we start actually being honest with ourselves, what can you expect from anyone else, right? If you can't even do that, and then you hide behind things like duty, right, which is said here. Now, what I did not ask is about the parent removing their support for actions the child may want to engage in that do not align with the parent's life values. That's different. That's not what I asked though, but that's what this is kind of answering. Right? And people can't tell the difference. They don't know the difference when a parent removes their support for their children's behaviour. Say, look, I'm not going to buy McDonald's because, for me, it doesn't line up with my values to feed you food that I don't trust is good for your health, right? I'm not going to do that, right? That's not violating anyone's right to choose. That's you standing up for your boundaries of what you're willing to put your life force energy behind. That's you making a choice and holding a boundary. People can't make the distinction, right? You haven't violated anyone's rights. You said, no, I'm not going to support that. That's different. And this is what people really struggle to understand. And so, yeah, when I say people don't understand something, they get offended. Oh, I think you know everything. I get that a lot. Yet, the very people who say that, I've never heard them explain how they come to their conclusions. And so am I really stating a fact that they're lacking a level of understanding in their conscious awareness? And when I mean that, I mean their intellectual capacity to be able to relay what their conscience knows. The work that I do, as best as I can explain it, is just to communicate to the intellect. So the intellect can get out of the way and your actual heart intelligence can start doing its job, because the intellect makes for a lousy master. It's an oppressor. That's why it's manipulated. That's why psychology is huge. That's why the whole PR industry is massive, because you can corrupt the intellect, but you cannot corrupt the conscience. That's why I ask questions to do with matters of conscience. I don't ask questions to do with people's opinions, because that's corruptible. And I've just shown you plenty of evidence of that. So that's what I wanted to get into. I've got one more slide, I'm pretty sure, because this is what I'm going to lead into next, because this is all about trial by jury. Right? If I was a jury member, I would put into practice what I've learnt. This is from the same woman, via this group, i.e. that I would be on a panel with my peers. I can't answer for those who swear an oath to uphold the law, whether they bear the burden of listening to their conscience or blindly follow orders. I'm gobsmacked with that statement, I'll be honest. I really, really am. I don't even know how to answer that without coming apart. You need to read that again. How they're saying I can't, or you won't answer, really. And why wouldn't you answer for whether there is such a thing as someone having the burden and responsibility to listen to their conscience? Why would you not have an answer for that? That's the part I don't understand. And go, well, I don't know. It's not up to me to decide if blindly following orders is something that's immoral. That could lead to a lot of harm. I couldn't figure that out, possibly. I don't have the capacity to figure that one out. Where have I seen evidence of that happening before? The answer cannot be black and white, really. Natural law may be immutable. I'm on board with that. But people are complicated. I would say it's impossible that some who swear this oath to uphold the law go into the field with genuine intention. Now, I've just shown you evidence that that's not even a thing, right? So how much research do people really do before they come to their opinions? This is what's tragic here, right? Or if, when they become corrupted and I was to judge them as part of a jury, I would have to look at intent. Jeez. You see how much evidence I've shown as to how much intent's already there? If they willfully continue to look the other way when they've seen the corruption, then I would judge them accordingly. Justice would be to remove them from their position. That's as far as you go, you reckon? And if our Constitution stands for anything, their action would be seen as acting against the people, so their assets would be stripped. So do you need a Constitution to tell you that? That's the next question, right? Or can you just consciously figure that out, right? Do you know when you're being violated? Do you need something written on paper to tell you whether that's a violation or not? You got to think about that, right? These people, sadly, this is the tragedy. Sadly, they for some reason just turn their hearts off and just allow all the poison that they've swallowed through their entire life to guide them. This is the tragedy. If, on the other hand, they were genuinely sorry for their part in upholding the system, but wanted to make amends, I would not be able to judge them with punishment. I would expect them to leave the job, though. So this is where I'm going to finish up. I'm going to start the next one here, because this is really important to get into the trial by jury, because I'm going to give you a scenario, right, and then see what making amends is, because most people that I've noticed speak in vague generalities. They don't even know what they mean when they say things like make amends. And that's what's really, really critical, is to know exactly what you mean when you say something. Because if you don't know that, then how is anyone else going to know it, right? So we're just living in this world of vagueness. Now, before I leave, there's a website, Magna Carta 1215. I'm just going to show you a little bit about that, and then I'm going to make the next one. Okay. Okay, so if you're looking to find some kind of guidance about moral principle, and that there is actually a structure in place that was built on moral principle, where the system of governance, which just means system of public servants and administration of how services will be delivered to the people equitably in order to advance the quality of all lives equally. This site has got plenty on it. I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to go too much into it because I've done plenty of other videos about that. But here we go, it's already standing on principle. You can see that unifying our community. It talks about the 1901 Australia Crime Punishment Manifesto, which is the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution. So it talks about why that's a fraud and how that's just more enslavement. And then you've got participate in our police letter campaign. If you want to do that, you can click on that, take you right there. Subscribe to the mailing list. As you go back up here, you can see all the different places you can look into. And so anyway, that's for you to discover in your own time, but just giving you a resource. It's magnacarta1215.com. There you go.